Roger Burnley is an amazing gentleman, 70 plus years old, who has spent the bulk of his life literally teaching people how to find their singing voice. Over the last few years, he has now switched to helping people metaphorically finding their voice. So he's got tremendous insight, very intuitive, and definitely worth a listen. Perhaps the funnest part is talking about his family tree. He's got very rich, interesting stories all up and down the line of his family tree. So take a listen and enjoy. And again, Roger Burnley, who was randomly introduced to me, and we just went ahead and hit record on our conversation. So you'll notice I don't even say his name at the start. Please enjoy. Imagine a conscious contact with God so strong that no matter what you are doing or not doing, that no matter what your kids are up to or not up to, and that whether you've got the person of your dreams or they're just not cooperating, that you are happy, content, and at peace. A space where everyone else's thoughts, attitudes, and actions are beautiful and exactly as they are supposed to be. Well, this is the space where I like to play. My name is Misha Z, and this is today's Bitch Slap. Join me as I shed light on the thoughts, actions, and attitudes that are causing you pain, and we train our minds to go to the capital S inner self, the joy that is waiting for us, the God within. That'd be great. So I'm good today. I'll tell you, I had a dream at 4 a.m. that woke me up, and it was one of those kind of dreams that shook me up a little bit, almost nightmarish, right? And so when I went to the restroom, I was kind of like looking over my shoulder. You know?
Yes. Who else is here?
Yes. It's way too much information for you, but suffice it to say that I did not fall back asleep. I usually get up fairly early anyway, but I was at 4:30. I was like, I might as well just get up.
I do that. That happens all the time. Yes, I know. Like, okay, you're trying to force yourself to go back to sleep. It's not going to happen. Get up.
Get up. So I have that kind of weird, I don't know if that now being a little more older, like the rebound from that moment, like I had you know how it's like I'm not I'm seeing the world a little bit differently because I'm a little from coming out of that tired frame, which is fine and it's good, and I'm in acceptance of it. But
you're reminding me
a little weird.
You're reminding me of something that's been coming through for me for a long time, and I haven't written about it yet through my Wilhelm. But one of them was something I keep remembering from a Seth book that I read many, many years ago. And it was one chapter. It goes, which you, which world, which reality, basically. It was something like that. And that's those moments where we're waking up and we're disoriented and go, what time and space is this now? I am shifting dimensions here. And then then we become a little more comfortable with it. Like, okay, okay, let me come back to this dimension now. I'm not quite done yet.
Yes, exactly. And I think it's fun to sort of enjoy it, embrace it, and I guess embrace is the best word, that lens, where before I would have been like, I need to get back here, where now it's like, well, wait a minute, just hang in there and play in that space.
Well, see, you're talking to someone who has tried to stay in that space forever, and this has been my entire journey, but I also understand that it's now becoming valuable as we're all moving through this big shift that we're all moving through. And so I wasn't supposed to awaken and do all of my stuff much earlier. It wouldn't have been as valuable for the older people, especially.
Yes.
To understand that, no, you're not done yet. There's still more for you to do. I wrote something this morning and and I love when the messages come out this way. And it said, self-acceptance is always unnecessary and always necessary.
Yeah.
And I said, and that that sentence, that confusion is exactly what we're all trying to figure out and always moving through,
Yeah.
And it came up because, and I'll tell you, because I said, oh, wait a minute, I had to run out this morning to meet with my friend because last night we went through this experience. And I'll tell you real quickly, he was my former roommate, he came here like more than 4 years ago. He moved out a couple of months ago, and he wanted to be an actor and all of that. And I never wanted to have a roommate.
Yeah.
I always lived by myself. I don't want to have anybody here. And
Yeah.
so when this came up, I knew something said, okay, you're supposed to do this. You're supposed to help this guy out. I don't know why.
Yeah.
And then every kind of pushback that you can imagine from my family and friends came to me. And I'm going, why are you doing this? What is going on? I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know why I'm doing it, but it just seems like this is planned and I've got to
Yes.
follow the plan. And it was challenging and it was difficult for the entire 4 years. And then a couple of months ago, he starts saying that he's going to do some acting. I mean, some comedy. And I go,
Yeah.
wait a minute, you're supposed to be an actor. I thought that's what you were doing, but now you're going to do comedy. And I don't know that you have any of that. I never said any of those words, however. I just said, I'm going to support this because I was really aware that in that moment, I was turning into a parent that would
Yes.
see something that we're not going to believe that this is going to actually turn out. And so
Yes.
then the whole experience, I wrote the entire thing because I wanted people to have this morning. And so as we were going, I didn't want to go last night to the show because I'm thinking I'm going to watch somebody get up on stage and just fall apart and bomb. And
Right.
I don't want to see that. I don't want to experience that. But I thought, and the other part says, no, you've got to be supportive. And so we get to the club, to the venue, and then I could see he was really nervous. And then before we left, I went to pick him up actually to drive him there. And he's saying, I can't find my script. And I'm thinking, perfect, because
Yeah.
you need to leave the script because
Yeah.
you already have this. You've prepared. You've
Yeah.
done this. I saw him prepare. And I'm watching his preparation. I'm impressed with that he was actually doing it. And so then he gets there and he goes in the restroom and I'm standing outside and he was in there forever. And I knew that he was freaking out. I knew
Freaking.
this was happening. And so then he came out and it was time for him to go on. And then what he did was he goes up on stage and he starts his act, he starts his set with on the backs of the act that had gone before, which was perfect because now his improv skills are coming through. And then he magically then weaves that back into his original material. And the audience is just loving it and
Oh
going
my
crazy.
gosh.
And I'm sitting there and going, just that. I'm going, oh my gosh.
What?
Because the important thing for this was I had this instinct, I had this intuitive feeling that I'm supposed to support and help this person because I know there's something there that will come out eventually, whenever that is. Okay,
Yes.
so it took 4 years, whatever, but that is nothing in terms of eternity. And so
Yeah.
I get all of that. So, but the more important thing was to witness my my lack of belief in him, which
Mm.
was reflecting my own.
So good. I love that.
Yeah.
That's so powerful. Like how I've been meditating a lot on when I get and this is exactly that of I went through this period where I was very frustrated as I'm starting new projects of my friends not supporting me, right?
Oh, that's perfect.
Right? And then if we think of the mirror, right? Like everybody's truly a mirror and I'm 100% all in on this that I'm
Right.
just projecting my
Yes.
experience
Yes.
onto
Yes. Yes.
them, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, but I don't want to believe it here. I want, right? I want, so I was like really digging deep on just what you're talking about. Well, really, how am I actually not supportive of them?
Hmm.
Right. And it's oftentimes in the mind too. I'm like, well, my one friend. So I'm like, well, I'm oftentimes critical of his relationship with his wife in my mind. I won't say it, but and so I'm like, gosh, right? Like I really, so no wonder I think he's not supportive of me,
Hmm.
you know? So, and so, which I think relates to what you're saying a
Oh
little
no,
bit. Does
absolutely.
that?
Because we're using. I mean, and I get to see, and I wrote this came up in the writing as well, because we were quite aware when we first came together, because it didn't make any sense for us to be living together. We have
Yeah,
these our age difference is like 30 some years between us.
yeah,
It was zero. It would make no sense.
no
But
sense.
we knew on some deep level that we were to help one another move through our limitations, some
Yeah,
limitations in some way. Didn't know what it was at the time, but this was a big one. That lack of belief was because it goes on for everyone. Then I wrote the message and sent it out, and I just received an email from someone who I haven't even opened it yet, but I could hear him say, "It's scary how much these messages feel like they're speaking directly to me." And they are, and I know that they are, because I know a little bit of his story, and he's an older guy too, who has been
yeah,
withholding so much his entire life. And I get so frustrated with when I see this, because I know that my mission here is to help other people own and what they have and uncover that, use it. And
yeah,
he has this talent that is just it drives me crazy to see him not owning it. But I
yeah,
know I can't push him. He's got to come to it when it's time in his evolutionary journey, and he'll figure that out. But he wrote a song, and I'll tell you, this is just still amazing to me. He wrote a song for his son. And his son is probably his 40s or 50 now. I mean, he's 40s at least. So this was a long time ago. And he played the song for me, and I'm thinking, why doesn't the world have this? It
mm,
was like this most beautiful song that talked about the love of a child, and it was just so beautifully written. And he sits there and he plays it with guitar, and I'm thinking, why? And he thinks that nobody's going to get it or understand it. And and all I can do is just say, you're going to figure this out eventually.
yeah. It's so hard to take messy action sometimes,
Yeah.
to to take that risk.
Yeah.
You know,
And
to
especially when you've got to think of the age that he is now. He's in his 70s, and so he has been discounting himself for decades.
mm,
And so it's a process of this rebuilding, and that's what I talk about with everyone, that no matter where you are, it's reprogramming yourself, because we've just
yeah.
programmed ourselves into limitation. So
And I love I was thinking, you just starkly brought up for me the illusion of age. It's like this illusion of
right.
when too late, or is it too late to start, or
I'm so glad you said that, because of last year, I turned 70 last year.
okay.
And
Congratulations.
thank you. And I said, I'm going to start talking about it, because I need people to see, yeah, you can still be vital. You can still do things. You can still
Yeah,
look like you can do all kinds of things, and you can
yeah,
start your next new project, no matter what age you are, because the chronological age is the thing that screws us up so much.
it really is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the thing. I mean, and it's funny, Misha. I have people who will come to me, Lord, 2025, thinking, I think that I missed the time. I think I missed what I was supposed to do. I'm like, are you kidding me?
you kidding me, right? Like, oh my gosh. I know, I'm 52. I think I'm 52. And so I'm really going through. I have an 18-year-old. I have a 20-year-old and an 18-year-old. My 20-year-old moved out a year or two ago, as soon as he got out of high school, and
Right.
on good terms. So what a gift that was.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and then my 18-year-old graduates this year. And so I'm in that, as you can imagine, like this empty nest phase is just like
Mhm.
flooding at me, right? So no matter, it's such a weird, I don't know how to say it, but I'm not unique from gonna having that grief experience or
Mhm.
that
Right.
awareness experience, right? There's no, I'd like to think, oh yeah, I'm self-aware enough that I won't know, I'm not going to have regrets,
Mhm.
or I won't question my existence,
Mhm.
or I won't, all these things. And
Well, this is the thing that I talk about also, because you're going through it in this sense. We
yeah,
have a separation anxiety about anything. We even
anything.
have it to horrible situations.
Yeah.
So, so for ones that were pleasurable and that were okay, it's like the kids leaving the house. Yeah, you're going to have a little bit of grief with that. And then
Yeah.
I explained and I said, you've been forming this separation anxieties from the time you were born because
Yes.
you didn't want to leave your mother's womb either. And
Yeah.
so that became a scary experience. That's why you screamed when you came out of the womb. It was
Yeah.
like, where am
Yeah.
I
Right.
going?
That's a great point. You're out of the out of the infinite goodness into into this new experience. So I you do are you mostly singing coaching or
Well, see,
so I yeah,
this is where we are now.
yes.
No, I mean that's what I've done for so many years. I started coaching actually in when was it 1988. That's when I started vocal coaching.
Okay.
And I just did it forever and I got pretty well known at it and pretty, people know me from then. So my presence in that sense was as this guy who was a vocal coach and performer. And several years ago I thought it's more than that. I
Yeah.
only use the vocal coaching to get me to what I'm doing now. And I can see
Yeah.
that very clearly.
I got that sense for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
And that's exactly what went on. And so now, but then my resistance was, okay, now how can I get people to understand this? How can I talk about myself differently and all of that? And the
Yeah.
fact was, I just had to do it.
Just had to do it.
I just had to start doing, and it was like pulling teeth along the way. I'm like, oh, but I had to be completely transparent because I knew I wasn't going to help anyone unless I was able to own my story in its entirety.
Yeah, and I think my guess is for you because I saw you have for example, your YouTube
Mhm.
vocal coach page where you
Right.
have 140,000 or 60,000,
180, I think, 184,
180,000.
184,000 now, which is like crazy.
That's crazy, and that's like a lifetime of work, perhaps. I mean,
Mhm.
if you want to think of it that way,
Mhm.
so like that's some time and effort and nurturing and embracing. I mean, being 70, you got to embrace YouTube and all that. So to embrace that and grow through that. And so to go from to have that in place
Mhm.
and then to be like, okay, I want to pivot from that. I mean, at what, this was 2 years ago, or is that what you were saying? Or
It was actually no, embarrassingly, it was longer than that.
oh, okay.
I started actually at the time, my former business partner in Australia
Yeah.
started to see who I was before, because we always see other people see us before we do.
Absolutely.
you
Yes.
know. And so he started saying, I think you're supposed to go into personal development. And he said he was only thinking of it from this marketing standpoint. He says it's a much bigger market than even the singing. And I said, okay, well, that makes sense. But I was still resistant. So then I thought, let me see what I can do. So then I tiptoed into it. I created a program. I go, let's just see what happens. And I called it The Complete Artist. But it was so I related it to music and singing and all of that. But I made it where people needed to get in touch with who they are to be able to really become an authentic and powerful artist. And it was a process, and I take them through showing how you break down why you're performing, who you're performing for, what are you singing, what are you communicating, what does that mean to you, all of that stuff. And it did pretty well. People liked it, and I thought, okay, that's something. And so then I said, I'm supposed to do a program, an online program. And so I was starting to create a program called Overcoming Everything, because my life experience kind of talked about that in so many ways. But then I said, no, then later, as we kept working on it, I changed the name. People kept saying, nobody's going to believe that title, first of all, so get something
Yeah,
else.
that's too much, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So I said, okay, so I'll change
Although
it.
it can be true.
It,
Although it can be
that's
true.
what I said. That's what I said.
Yes.
I've done it, but I say I'll go along with this. And so then I changed it to Empowerment Made Simple, which was perfect because it goes along with my brand. My singing program was Singing Made Simple. So I said, this is absolutely wonderful. But I still did not release it. I started shooting videos for it in 2016. I then spent in 2017, I shot them all again. 2018, I shot them all again. And I kept
Right.
doing all of
Trying
that.
to get that perfection.
And then I'm looking at them and I'm going, there's very little difference here. And it doesn't matter. It is just you
Doesn't matter.
procrastinating.
I love
So
it.
just do it. And then I started doing it. I released it. I was testing it with folks first, and then I put it out. I released it a couple of months ago, and I'm receiving the results that I were surprised with, that people are saying they're really transforming. It's working. They're receiving the results that I promised, and that's what I'm thrilled about. And then I look at it and I go, I need to take this program because if I were to do my own
I
program, I
love
would be in
that.
a much better place right
I
now.
love that. So good. So
Yeah.
did, I love that. So how are you? Two things. How are you getting it out there, and who? But let's start with first. Who's your target person? Is it somebody? Who's your target or your?
My target, and yeah, I know what you mean, and I have to break it down into specific targets. The
Yeah.
ultimate target is people who just really want to feel secure with what they're here on the earth to do. That's
Yeah.
ultimately what I know I'm doing. And when I started talking to folks about my intuitive sessions, my intuitive empowerment life coaching sessions, and I said, when I'm working with you, all I'm doing is energetically feeling what you're talking about, and if there's something real, and if I can get into, and if I feel some blockages there,
Yeah.
because I can feel that very, very easily, because not so much on myself, but on you, I can get it. And so we talk it through, and that's how this works. So as I started talking about that more and seeing that it was working, I go, wow, that's exactly how I created my program too, because I don't know where this stuff came from.
Yeah.
I just wrote it, and it seems to be, and it works. So that's all I'm going with. So what I did, I used the people who are on my list from, mainly singers and all of that,
Yeah.
to then start introducing them to this stuff. And a lot of them just loved it. And more of my people that are in my Empowerment Made Simple came to me first through singing.
Yeah. You know what's cool about that too is if you've been building, if you've been helping people
Mhm.
for 30 or 40 years, is that what
Right.
that is? I mean,
Coaching 33, yeah.
yeah, then I mean, you must have people that have grown up with you.
Oh yeah, I have. I've listen. I have even, I've even coached the kids of parents that I coached when they were younger, and then
yeah,
they send their kids to me, which was really
yeah,
cool. Like, oh
yeah.
wow, yeah.
That's great. So tell me, if you had somebody who was, let's say you had somebody like me 5 years ago
Mhm.
who who I was on the tail end of a divorce. Both my parents had died within 2 weeks of each other. I
Mhm.
went through, this was all in like in a very rapid succession, right?
Mhm.
So uh parents died, career upheaval, and I went from being very successful to all of a sudden the wheels came off. And
In other words, you were saying you were set free.
yes, absolutely, I was set free. And what's hard is finding that awareness, right? So there's people who are going to have that pull yourself up from your bootstraps attitude,
Mhm.
that I can fix this, right? And and but it's like, well, maybe going back to the old isn't so good. Why don't we embrace the new?
Mhm.
If you came across that person, what and they said, hey, help me
First,
get back moving in a good direction,
right.
what would you tell them?
First of all, I would want them to accept the integrity of their physical life experience. And what that means is that your events and all the situations and circumstances and people are lined up in your life in a particular way that is helping you to evolve and awaken to who you're supposed to be. The timing of it, all of it is completely put together for you to be able to figure that out. And so what happened for you in quick succession, so it could get your attention and wake you up, was that let's have the parents go, let's have the divorce, let's be left alone, let's lose career, because all the material things didn't mean anything. They weren't the reason that you were here. And so
Yes.
now you've been opened up to this prime position in your life to be able to offer so much value to so many more people because of the life experience you've lived. The
Yeah.
problem that we have at times is not being willing to be as honest with that experience on all of its aspects to give it back to others so that they can move with that and evolve.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I love that. Thank you for that. So we get the acceptance point. And do
Mhm.
you, in your program, do you have like that tools to help find the
Yes.
acceptance?
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Cool.
I take them through the program is broken down. I said it's 52 weeks
Yeah.
because you're not going to this. I said, I never want anyone coming into and working with me and thinking that this is some quick fix and I'm going to find some simple formula and all of a sudden my life is going to be changed.
Yeah.
It's first of all, it's not authentic and typically doesn't work. That's why you're still in the same position that you were before when you started that
Yeah.
thing. So you're going to understand that you're just in this process of uncovering stuff and releasing your limitations. I kind of come in this place where I said, if you look at your life, that all you're doing, you were born because you wanted to become more. You were born because you wanted to evolve. And the only way you're going to do that is looking at the things that are in front of you and deciding to either move over them, step around them, or figure them out in some way. That's all
Yeah.
you're doing.
Yeah. I love that. You know what I like too is I think the illusion is I think when you get a bit older, or when I was in that space that I was in, that I've got to apply all these great tools to get me forward, is like I
Mhm.
actually don't want the promise of that shiny transformation. I just want to know, give me a bit to get moving in the right direction.
Mhm.
Right? Like I don't need I just give me some hope, right?
Right.
Like give me a little bit of forward momentum,
Mhm.
and then great. Now good, I got some more forward momentum. So
Mhm.
we get on acceptance. Okay, I'm in acceptance. And then so what would be your next?
You
What's
just
after acceptance?
you talked about well, first of all, acknowledgement. I
Mm,
have three things that I use a lot, and to that we're all looking for the same thing: it's acceptance, approval, and acknowledgement.
okay.
And so when we think about that, and the one thing that we have to do once we accept who we are, and this is coming up, and we have to acknowledge that we allowed ourselves to get here, you know,
Yeah.
and that we approve of it. Because ultimately, we're just trying to approve of ourselves. I said one of the things that came through in one of my messages that the biggest irony of life is that we move through it to get to the end to discover all we were trying to do was become ourselves.
Yeah. Love that.
Mm.
So good. Um, so do you have, so you've got this great list that you're working with now, right?
Well, it's not a
So
great list anymore. It used to
oh,
be. It was.
oh
I'm looking at this is that I'm starting from the beginning,
yeah,
and not from the beginning, but I'm starting over. I'm in the
yeah,
process. I've just changed my website, for instance, and today we've got to hook things up. Everything's all in
yeah,
a mess. I bought a program more than a year ago that I thought, okay, I can have everything hosted here on
yeah,
this one place, but I'm technology is not my thing. I don't do it. I don't like it,
yeah,
and it's a problem for me. So I have to get other people to do it. So I have a guy who's moving all of this stuff and
yeah,
putting it there. And so now we've got to go back in now and reattach things so everything is working. And then I have to look at it. And I told them my vision of who I am has changed a bit now. So this is perfect because now I have to write that and put it into the website. It's got to, my presence is going to be a little bit different.
yeah,
And I have to, and I haven't even written this yet, but I do know that what my particular, I feel like everyone here has a particular job that they're born to do, and
yeah,
no one can do your job. That's why
yeah,
you were given that job. And so when I look at mine and I think, okay, I understand things from this fifth dimensional, all these other places, I get that, but I also I'm really grounded in 3D reality. And
yeah,
I know that my particular thing, this lifetime, this time that I'm here traversing the planet, is
sure.
to meld, is to bring those things together in a
Mm,
way that people can use them. And I recognize that because one of the first books that I still refer to as my Bible is a Seth book called The Nature of Personal Reality. And I can pick that, it's like almost 600 pages, this book, and I read it so many times in my life. And I can pick it up and I say, oh, okay, now I understand. And, but it was the thing that they said in this book, the
say the
sub
name of the book again
of
for me.
the nature of personal reality.
Okay.
And their whole purpose, they said, was to give you practical tools to live your life more effectively, or, that basically it's what it is.
Yeah.
But they're talking about all this other stuff that you just don't understand. It takes you a while to get it. I would read the book and I would read a page or paragraph, and it would take me in the beginning. It doesn't take me that long anymore, but in the beginning, when I would read it, I would read a paragraph, have to think about it, go back, read it again. Oh, and then something would start to make sense. Then
Yeah.
as my knowledge started to increase, then I could get through a lot quicker. I would understand
Yeah.
it, and then things felt more like reminders
Yes.
rather
Yes.
than
I
new
love that. I
information.
love that.
Yeah.
I love that. That's a great way to frame that, to
Yeah.
say that. I don't, have you ever seen the Course in Miracles?
Well, I did the Course in Miracles. I did the
Yeah.
entire course.
Yeah.
And I see, okay, I want to go back a little bit more. I began with stuff before it was kind of mainstream the way more so as it is now, like,
Sure.
back in the 70s, and I didn't know what the heck I was doing back then.
Yes.
And so in 1986, I live in California, I'm in Los Angeles. And
Okay.
in 1986, a guy I was working for was good friends with Marianne Williamson.
Okay.
Marianne?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. And so she was doing lectures on A Course in Miracles. And so he says, you should go. And I started going. And then I met her and I became best friends with her assistant at the time. We would create music together and we would perform at her lectures. We did all this stuff for
Oh,
years, And so then I did the course. I did the entire course. But then I left everything. Then I didn't leave it all, but I did not pursue that. I stayed. Oh, yeah, bless you.
Thank you.
And so, so the Course in Miracles, that it was life changing, but I needed more life before I was
Yes.
willing to really embrace it and understand it. I studied so many different modalities. I mean, I first started with science of mind.
Okay.
And then to take you back even further, when I was raised, I've had this whole litany of things. I was raised in a family. My grandmother was a Christian Scientist.
Okay. That's
And
pretty heavy.
it was very heavy. And so to be a kid and go into that religion, and already you're feeling set aside, because we knew that we were different even when we went to school.
Yeah.
Like when things would happen, we were exempted from certain things because for religious reasons or whatever. So
Yeah.
we would start to feel somewhat separate and different in that. And I got it. However, I appreciated somehow the information that I was getting. And I'm only understanding now that the one driving force that was in my life was my grandmother, because she was this exemplary, she was this example of what could be done. And I thought, I never saw her sick a day in her life. I mean, one day I can remember one day that she was in bed with a cold or something like that. Nothing else. I couldn't remember it. And then I would see, and I had everything wrong with me. I would go through, I had so many illnesses and stuff. And I remember one time talking to her about it. And because I was frustrated. Why can't I do all this stuff?
Yeah.
And she says, you work to the level of your understanding.
Mm.
And I've always carried that around and say, yeah, we're capable of a lot of things. We're capable of anything, but we may not have built up the belief to be able to achieve that yet. So sometimes we need help. We always need help, typically, even trusting ourselves.
Hold on one second.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you were saying need help trusting ourselves. I want to ask you a question about your grandmother, and because I had this thought in regards to Christian Scientists, and I have a very limited understanding or awareness or education about it. So just little bits of information. But I had this thought of you've the Christian Scientists, if I believe this right, they're like, hey, if we get sick, we're gonna trust that God is gonna heal us or cure us. Is that an accurate way to say that?
It's that the result or the manifestation of an illness or a disease is error, a mistaken.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And I love that. And so, thank you. And so I had this idea as I started thinking of it from this angle of if we're looking at everything, it's an illusion, and so there really is no death, and it's going back to the great consciousness, or however you want to say it. It's like, to be that confident it was very empowering thought for me to be
Mhm,
that confident in source or God or
mhm,
the infinite or the great mind, again, however you want to say it, to be like, you know what? I was thinking at it from this angle. If I get sick and I'm meant to die, so be it, because my attachment to this existence on the planet is not there anymore.
mhm.
Does that is there
Yeah.
that sense within the Christian scientists as well, or am I stretching that?
No, it's that's basically it. But they sense that everything that occurs on the in the physical plane is related to the spiritual. That's it. I mean, they were the first ones to put that together. So, in if something is misaligned or a disease in within the physical body,
Yeah.
then Louise Hay,
Yeah.
correct? Yeah. Well, Louise Hay started. She was a Christian Scientist.
Yeah.
And so she healed herself of cancer. And this is how she then took that on to create, everything she did, her book and
Yeah.
all of her books and Hay
Yeah.
House and all of the stuff that she's created was a result of that. So certain people do come with that ability to be able to manifest, connect with that infinite wisdom where they can heal things that cause healing to occur.
Yeah.
I was not able to do that quite in
Yeah.
that way,
Well,
but I wasn't supposed to.
yeah. Well, I was even thinking of it from this point. It's like at some point you transcend the need to heal
Right.
the physical body. Like that's an illusion.
Mhm.
It's like I am as God
Oh,
created me, and
yeah.
I'm not attached to my body anymore. So if I'm meant to
You
move on,
okay.
I don't.
This
Who
is why you
cares?
this is why you asked about my grandmother because you wanted to hear this. Okay.
Yeah.
She when she was about when she got her my grandfather had passed about I think 5 years before, 4 or 5 years before she did. And so she came down with a condition which could have very easily been cured with intervention, with medical science.
Okay.
She said, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
And she went to a they call it a sanitarium or something. It's a Christian Science place where you just go and you just work with practitioners. And the
Okay.
practitioners are just reinforcing, it's just like NLP, really basically, they're reinforcing beliefs and getting you to feel a certain way. But she was ready to leave her body.
Yeah.
She was done. And
Yeah.
so, and the most beautiful thing was she, my mother was at work at the time that this was occurring, and she was trying to get to the place, to the sanitarium, to visit her mother because she knew things were getting bad. The people there had told her, and she couldn't get there in time. And
Mm.
so, but as she was speaking to her mother on the phone, the last thing she said, she remembers this. She remembered that so well. She said, "All is well," and
Mm.
she hangs up. And she knew that was her, and she knew she was going to leave before my mother got there because that was
Mm.
easier. She was very aware of what she was up to, and that kind of awareness, I don't know. I mean, many people come to that, and it's something about the impending death. My sister-in-law, who died very young, at 50 actually, had that same sort of awareness. She knew what was occurring. She had breast cancer, and she knew
Mm.
that where it had gone. She thought she did everything, but at some point she says, this was my time and I'm supposed to move on. And she then wanted all of us to take over. And it was, and I was just not accepting this, no, like, you're not going. She goes, yes. And this is
Mm.
what I want you to do. And I go, okay. Some people just come to that awareness, and it's
Mm.
something about, maybe that when death gets that close, we can start to think it a little differently. I don't know,
Yeah.
or an
I don't know,
awareness.
right?
Yeah, an awareness comes or something. So,
It's an interesting question. I just published an interview today
mhm.
by Barbara Carnes. Does that name ring a bell? That may not, but she's
No.
hospice. So she was on
Oh,
the hospice wave of
mhm.
the 1980s. So she really helped
Oh,
bring that.
yeah, I did a lot of that too.
Cool.
I
And
guess, yeah.
yeah. And so she was an RN.
Mm,
So she in the 80s, did a few hundred, 400. She was, a hospice nurse. So
mm,
she got to experience,
mhm,
300 or 400 deaths. And so
mhm,
she saw the patterns of people dying, and she wrote
Mhm.
this amazing um, pamphlet. Or it's not a pamphlet, it's a booklet. It's called Gone from My Sight: The
Mhm.
Dying Experience, and it really talks about the gradual death experience for
Mhm.
those of us that are lucky enough in this life, or maybe unlucky enough, however you want to say it, right? There's the fast death and there's the gradual death.
Mhm.
So
Right.
she talks about the gradual death experience, and what the body goes through. It's in your mind and these things. But she wrote this amazing pamphlet. What's my point? My point is that I don't know.
Okay.
I would
Well, let
encourage
me
you to
talk about, even though you brought up something else for me, but we're always being prepared to understand the stuff. And that's kind of what you were saying here, because
yeah,
I was ended up in a place when you start talking about the hospice in the 80s
yeah,
and all of
yeah.
that. In 1980s, I was working for a company called Life Appreciation Training. I go,
Okay.
how the hell did I get here? What is
Yeah,
it? I just needed a job at the
yeah,
time, but we always end up in the spaces we're supposed to be.
yeah,
And what it turned out was this company trained funeral directors how to deal with grief. I go, that
yeah,
makes no sense, because then the guy who was the on who he had been a mortician, and the guy who started the company, he says, no, you don't understand. This is not taught in mortuary school. They tell you to distance yourself from the families and from all
mm,
the emotion. And we don't believe that's helpful. And so what he did,
mm,
he had this brilliant idea. He created a seminar to train these funeral directors how to deal with first their own grief, so that they
mm,
could move through that, so they
yeah,
would be available for everyone else. And
yeah,
so because, and to not be afraid of it, people need that compassion, that empathy
yeah,
as they're moving through that experience. So
yeah,
it was the most extraordinary thing for me to witness this, because then later I walked both of my parents through their deaths.
yeah. It's beautiful.
So I knew that experience. I knew when, and I'm talking through them and letting them go. And when
Yeah,
they let go, you feel this release. It's a physical, you can feel it, a release of the spirit that just goes from the body.
yeah.
So it's powerful.
It's very powerful. And I think why I mentioned Barbara was just the way she talks about, the dying experience,
Mhm.
and all these sort of metaphysical uh things that are circling around. It's
Mhm.
so powerful to hear her talk, because you can't help. It's like, even talking to you, and you have that experience with both your parents, that there's some visceral,
Right.
some,
That's, yes,
you
yes.
know
There's an essence, that was there, now it's not. And so it's just transit. And there's a reason that people use the word transition.
yeah,
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 because that's what we do.
yeah, yeah. That's cool. So do your grandmother and your mother and you, so you were close with your grandmother. Is this in LA, or where is this when
No,
you?
Chicago. I grew up
Chicago.
in Chicago. Yeah, my grandmother, she lived in Chicago, and so that's where we were from. I moved out of there. I moved to New York when I got into my late 20s, and then moved to
Yeah.
California in '82.
Yeah. Okay. That's so the Chicago experience. From You were born in Chicago?
Yes,
What year, if you don't mind me asking?
60. I was born in 1950.
50. So 50 until 82 you're in
And
Chicago.
yes, and so I lived through, and this is why I'm understanding, and this is why I want everyone to understand. I guess again, the timing of their lives, and the chronological age has nothing to do with anything. And you live through certain experiences so you can be helpful. That's
Yeah.
what I want everybody to understand. And I
Yeah.
lived through 1968 in Chicago, and
Yeah.
which was very similar to what we experienced in last year. It was
Yeah.
very similar. I mean, we had riots, we had racial
Yeah.
unrest, we had come through, still in the midst of the civil rights movement. And I had gotten very involved when I was a teenager, not knowing why I
Yeah.
was doing this. I mean, Martin Luther King was my idol, and I had to go
Yeah.
and see and hear him. My parents, and then I felt this activism part of me emerging, but my parents said no, because you're going to
Yeah.
get killed, you're going to get murdered. I wanted to go and be a part of some of the marches.
Yeah.
They said no. But and so then in 1968, my entire world changed. But I'm also understanding now that it was that pivotal moment, like you had when you hit the 40s, but mine happened then.
Yeah.
Um, when Martin Luther King was shot, it was so perfect because I'm on a bus. I'm on a school bus. We had just come back from a singing competition and we were celebrating because we had
Mm,
gotten a superior rating and we were so thrilled that we had accomplished this. And then they tell us to sit down. And then they tell us that Martin Luther King was
mm,
assassinated. The the depth of this, I mean, I can't even tell you what I
mm,
felt at that moment. I'm like, this is my idol, and then I'm having this one aspect of my life that's going great, and then this horrible thing is happening at the same time, which is what goes on in our lives all the time, to open us up to something else. Then later
mm,
on in the year, then we have Robert Kennedy to get assassinated again, also in in here in LA, but he was also a person who was very important in my life because we had known when John F. Kennedy was assassinated, that really destroyed me at that point. Now I'm seeing his brother go as well. Why is this happening? Why am I experiencing it? And then
mm,
when we went through all of the stuff last year, and that's still occurring and still going on, and people are taking sides and being there, and I said, oh, but I'm here to bring a different light to this. And that's all I have to do. That's
mm.
all I'm supposed to do. Because I know what goes on. I know what happens. I know the fear that people are feeling because people will look at our world now, especially in this country, and think, oh, this is just, we're destroyed and we're never going to come back to being anything like what we want. And that's exactly how we felt in 1968.
And then the hope in that is that there was a rebirth and beauty that came out of that time frame, although it was incredibly painful. And I imagine being in
Absolutely.
Chicago on the bus coming
Right.
from your singing competition. Was it I don't know if I'm asking this right or if this is
Mhm.
an ignorant question, but was it was it were you segregated at that point, or
No,
was it
no,
no?
no, no, no,
Okay.
no. At this time, oh, well, that's interesting. It was another part of my journey, though,
Yeah.
that you should bring that up. So let's go back a little bit further,
Yeah.
because when I was in Chicago until I was 12 years old, I lived in a neighborhood that had gone through a transition. I remember when I have no memory of when I was, a child, really
Yeah.
young, but I do know that I would see white people in my neighborhood. And sometimes I would go to different places, different apartment buildings, and it was a little
Mm.
different, and because white people lived there, I didn't know what was going on at that time.
Yeah.
Then I came to discover that the entire neighborhood used to be white and Jewish mostly, and so
Okay.
that's what I was seeing. I mean, I'm seeing yarmulkes and all kinds of things that I didn't understand
Yeah.
at that time,
What's this
and
imagery?
yeah, and so, but I got it. I said, okay, there's something here, and then as this started changing, you're coming into adolescence, you start forming your biases and all of that. And so I'm hanging out with kids in the neighborhood. And so I started picking up on the stuff that they were saying. And we went to the YMCA, and there were white people there. I mean, we were kind of segregated there in the YMCA, but it was a little weird. But I came home and made some derogatory comment about white people. My grandmother again said, "You will never say anything like that again."
Mm.
She taught me the importance of, no matter what's going on, not to have that kind of a bias or prejudice. And it started then. I mean, and I never said anything like that again. I understood what she was saying. So that was the first. So I leave. So then in 12, we moved to a new neighborhood. In this new neighborhood, it was all white and mainly Jewish again. I go, okay, this is happening again. What's happening? What's going on here?
Mm.
And so then I go to my school. I'm in seventh grade. I'm in the second half of my seventh grade at this point, and I was only in my classroom. There was only one other Black person, and so now I'm really set aside. And I go, oh, but I've been
Wow.
used to being set aside, so this was
Mm.
okay.
Yeah.
This is all right. And then I started magically becoming accepted in certain ways, but until I was 13.
Mm.
Um, what happened in that year, I was elected uh, class treasurer, which was a historical thing because first of all, there hadn't been any Black people in the school. And there definitely had not been any class officers that were Black elected. So I was the very first one. But then
Yeah.
also my very best friend, and I knew nothing at this time about discrimination or differences or any of that. It had been long enough now that I just wasn't seeing it
Mm.
anymore. And then it's when I turned 13, my best friend, who was Jewish, was having his bar mitzvah. Now he lived directly across the street from me. We were very friendly. We would spend the night at one another's house. We would do everything,
Mm.
like his parents, all bit. But when we had the bar mitzvah, I couldn't come.
Mm.
They could not. The parents, it was the most difficult thing they could ever do because they couldn't have me there. They could not break the norm of because it wouldn't have been acceptable to have a black person show up.
Did they talk to you about that?
No,
Was it open? No.
no,
Mm.
no, no. And I just I didn't know what I mean. I just as a kid, nobody explained it,
Mm.
and I just knew that it had happened,
Yeah.
and I came to accept it and understand it later.
Yeah.
And so that I know that part of my journey in this life is to help people move beyond that. And
Mm.
that's what my life experience has really been about.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I mean, it's beautiful. Thank you for sharing the experience and just the thoughts around it. And it's life's an interesting thing, and if you have some compassion for your Jewish friends' parents, right? You there was turmoil there. You just know it. If we can
Oh,
look at
absolutely.
that, right?
Yeah.
Like what a heavy place to be
Yeah. And I
where
know so much so for the mother because she loved me. And
mm.
I knew it would have been really difficult for her to make that decision, to make that choice.
So tell me about your grandmother. So on one hand, she's a Christian Scientist,
Mhm.
which I assume comes with a lot of rigidity and closed-mindedness, but I could totally be wrong.
No,
And
no,
you're
it's not as not like fundamentalist religions. It's not like that. They didn't
okay.
hold judgment and they didn't have all of that. They want everybody
Okay.
to do what you do. We just do what
Yeah,
we
yeah.
do. That's that.
Uh,
They did not have any of that. And she came from a very different kind of a background as well, which was different, which again is showing me that my whole ancestral lineage was supposed to be a bit different as well.
yeah.
She grew up in Mississippi. She
Okay.
in the South, and she was but her family was a little more affluent. Her
Okay.
father was a government worker. He had a prominent position, one of the first for Black people that he had gotten, and all of that. She went to a boarding school, she didn't go to a public. She
Okay.
went, yeah, so that was very different. And then later is when she moved to Chicago. Now she had become a school teacher when she was in
Yeah.
Mississippi, but when she came to Chicago, she didn't want to do the whole thing again and getting a license because you would have to get a different kind of certification to be in Chicago to teach. And so, but she was a seamstress, and so she decided I'll stay home and I'll do that. And so she made a wonderful business out of her being a seamstress and all of that and studying her work. My grandfather worked for the government for years and years and years, and
Yeah.
that's how they existed. And they had such an awareness of how to pull themselves up, and they were able to buy an apartment building
Yeah.
and do all kinds of things. I mean,
Wow.
from kind of nothing.
Let
Yeah.
me ask you a question. That's really interesting to so, and it sounds like too, like your grandmother, which she instilled obviously in her parents
Mhm.
or your parents, so her kids,
Mhm.
which filtered down to you, just the whole thing of this of an empowerment versus
Mhm.
versus versus like to be able to let go of history.
Mhm.
Perhaps I don't know if I'm saying this right, and I don't want to sound ignorant because
Mhm.
I'm just a white guy from Wyoming. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? So so thank you for indulging me, but it sounds like your grandmother just was like, what can we do to thrive and live a good life and
Yeah.
be all encompassing and love and what a great lesson that is for
Mhm.
all of us.
Mhm.
Does that resonate at all
Yes,
or
because I mean, I can look back and I can see how it was a lineage that was passed on to her from her parents, even her mother, who now that you're speaking, these things keep coming back. I keep having more and more memories.
yeah
My great grandmother, my grandmother's mother,
yeah
I was obviously very close to and felt in somehow really connected to her because she died when I was about five, I think, 4 or 5. But she had moved to Chicago as well because her thing was she always came to Chicago to help my grandmother with the kids. My grandmother had 2 kids, and so my great grandmother would come to Chicago and stay there with them. And her husband was still in the South, still in Mississippi. And so when she was there, my parents, my mother started going to work after I was born. So my great grandmother became my caretaker in a sense, she, and so, and they told me that when she died, she had a rocking chair in her room, in the front room, in her bedroom, actually. And they said after she died, I was just a kid, and I would just sit in that chair because I was missing that presence. Didn't know why I was connected to it, but I was missing that presence in a certain way as a kid. And I'm seeing now, and this is why my job now, I love having people connect the dots of their lives to find this magnificent story that they've been living. That's the whole thing that I really love doing with people, because I'm seeing that now, that all of these connections that we didn't completely understand eventually end up making sense. That's which is the title of my new book that I'm writing. So I'll tell you. And I thought this is so perfect. And I'm going to register it today. I said it because I keep talking about it. It said somebody will write the book before I do. And it's called You're Not Crazy and Your Life Makes Sense. How to Find Your Life Purpose.
So good.
Yeah, that's the one I want to do, because everyone is living it. We just don't understand it. We don't believe it. And so I know that when I talk about my journey and my example, it's going to help other people then understand and come to accept theirs.
Do you know what year your grandmother was born?
Is it 1911? Is it? Let me, oh, wait a second.
And then I'm curious about your great grandmother as well.
Let's see. Oh, I got a client at 11:30. Okay, we're good.
See
some. No, let me see. If she 19, let me just figure this. I never thought about that. I know I have it. We have it somewhere. I think it was around 1901. Yeah, it's somewhere in there, because my grandfather was 1900 or just before that, 1901 or 2 or somewhere in there. And then so my great grandmother, no clue at all. Somewhere we have these things written down. So I'll have to find.
I was just curious about approximation, just to get a sense of the time and the
yes. They were going through. They lived through the pandemic. They lived through the 1918 one. They lived through that. They lived through. They've talked to me about the Depression. So all the things that we have all recently experienced again. They gave me a little bit of information about that stuff.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I was hoping to just record and then talk, and then if something came about, but it sounds like we have the makings of a chunk of it.
We could talk about so much stuff. I'm telling you, what I'm thinking is that I would love to do some of these where we're broadcasting it live and talking about things.
Yeah,
because I know that I am so much better when I'm asked questions and things come up, and you're good at that. So I mean, I don't know. We could do. I think there's so much we could do together.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's plan on circling back around again.
Yeah. And you have something coming up that you're promoting or doing, or?
Yeah. So I have a summit. It's called the 2021 Tools for a Good Life Summit.
Oh, cool.
And basically it's all the tools to change and grow. And so from the I'll make it fast, scientific to the metaphysic, from the ancient to the modern, right? So we've got therapy on the left, astrology on the right, and everything in between.
I love pulling them all together because I love getting people to see that you made all of it. So it's all humans. You made all of it. So it's all connected. You're just figuring out how it works for you and how.
Yeah.
I'd
So
love to know that.
We can let's plan on talking more about that too. So you've got a client in 40 seconds, it looks like. So
Yes.
so
And I'll send you this video when this is done too, so you'll have this.
Perfect. And then I'll pick another time, maybe next week on your calendar, and we'll talk some more.
Yes, absolutely. I love that.
Great. Roger, it's been a pleasure.
Good. Okay. All right. See you soon.
All right. Bye.
Okay,
Bye. Bye. Thank you for spending time with me today. As someone who is committed to growth and service to this world, I so appreciate your willingness to come with me, go within, and serve our world through change. If you found value in this podcast and you know someone who can use this message, share this episode with them. Share it so our mission can be achieved one episode at a time. And of course, subscribe so you can hear more. And lastly, for more resources on what has helped me on my journey and can help you on yours, go to belove.media/resources. That's BELOVE.media/resources. Thank you again for listening.